Okay, well, welcome. I think I know everybody pretty much from EntreCompEdu and our different activities, so great to see you. I'm going to just do a quick introduction, and then I'm going to hand over to Hazel, who is going to take us through session today, Laughter Lubricates Learning. I can't say that enough. Great believer in this one. So I'm going to just share my screen because what you'll notice today is that we are actually going to be sharing this event under as EntreCompEdu, but also as EntreComp Europe. So we're sharing this through our EntreComp Europe work. And I just wanted to introduce you because maybe you weren't so aware of our EntreComp Europe work. We try and bring all of these different projects and activities together. So we are taking EntreCompEdu into the EntreComp Europe activity. But before I go into that in too much detail, it is being recorded. You will have seen that alert when you came through. If you don't want to be recorded, please switch your camera off and also change your name. We're happy for you to use chat at any time, as always. And of course, we'd love you to say your questions out loud as well. So please, feel free to turn your microphones on to ask a question as well. It's a little reminder, but I think everybody here is very familiar. This is the kind of basis upon which we are underpinning our work in EntreComp Europe and EntreCompEdu, everything to do with EntreComp, because this is the definition that it uses. It's about that ideas into action and transforming that into value for others, whatever that value might look like, social, cultural, or financial. And this underpins the concept of EntreComp and the being entrepreneurial approach of mindset and skills, competencies that we explore through the cafe sessions and through all of the many projects that link into EntreComp and the entrepreneurial learning that is underpinned by this framework. EntreComp Europe is working across different countries, really across sectors. So looking at the lifelong learning approach, and it's exploring how EntreComp as a framework can be used at system level to underpin, to inform, to inspire development in all of these different sectors. So looking at formal, non-formal youth work, looking at employment and looking at enterprise from startup through to growth. Many partners involved in EntreComp Europe, 15 partners, coordinated by a lovely woman called Greta in Eurochambers, who's got a challenge to keep us all in line. But really, it's about 5 member countries across Europe and our partner countries around Europe, and they really come together into the 5 collaborative communities. And this forms the basis, the core really of the emerging and developing EntreComp, the EntreComp community. These country communities you'll see will be within that. And Belgium, Spain, Italy, Turkey, and Moldova are developing their national stakeholder groups, be those educators, youth workers, employees, employment support organizations, to really bring things together. And it's being organized across 3 practice pillars. You can see here, one of them, assessment and digitalization. And something that we're very interested in is to try and recognize the engagement of different partners through EntreComp community badges and recognition channels. So just to let you know, stay up to date. You can find our communities on Facebook, and you can also pre-register, as I think most of you have, onto the EntreComp community platform as well. So just stay in touch, but really delighted to have you with us today. For the benefit of Lilywed's future education, over to you, Hazel, and how can laughter lubricate learning?
Thank you very much, Ellen. Right, okay, so from ha-ha to aha. And I'm not sure if those noises translate particularly well, but ha-ha is obviously laughing, but aha is that aha, that eureka moment when the pennies drop, when the idea takes shape. So that's aha, in case it doesn't, in case you don't use it in your home language. So hello and welcome to this afternoon's EntreComp Europe Café. And for those of you who don't know me, but I think we've all met before, my name's Hazel and I work with Brantony Education. And I'm very keen on making laughter, making learning fun. And as a teacher, I would always say laughter lubricates learning as the phrase to remind myself that learning can be and should be frequently enjoyable and fun, because that's how I like to learn. And this is in no way to take away from the very hard work and effort that you put into a challenging piece of work and that enormous sense of satisfaction that you get when you've been working very hard or you've overcome something that you were struggling with. You know, effort, that isn't to undermine the effort and reward link that there is available in learning, but I'm all for making things enjoyable as much as possible. I think this probably stems from my experience with hard to reach groups. I tended to teach those learners who were, well, disengaged, demotivated, who did not have very good self-esteem, didn't believe themselves to be good learners. So I would always try to make the learning fun, because they would end up learning and enjoying themselves and forgetting about these negative experiences and negative attitudes that they may have had to learning before. Okay, so a little bit of an icebreaker to start off. Please could you introduce yourself in the chat, including where you're logging in from, and please include a joke to warm us up a bit. So I've put a really terrible joke on the screen, which is a pun on the word week. 7 days without laughter makes 1 week. So week in this case without energy, but also the same word means, oh, thanks, Megan. Megan's put a laughing emoji. I'm not sure it's that crying, laughing funny, but it's to illustrate that no joke is too bad for sharing this afternoon.
I'm sharing a classic joke with you, Hazel. Why was 6 afraid with 7? Do we all know the answer?
No.
Because 7, 8, 9. It's a classic one.
Yes.
And good for English language learners as well.
Yes, lovely. Hi, Bazam. Hi, Julie. Right, okay, so Halloween joke. Why did the skeleton not want to go to the ball? I don't know. Why did the skeleton not want to go to the ball? Because he had no body to go with. Very good, very good. This is one of my favorites from when I was little. What did the peanut say to the elephant? Nothing. Peanuts can't talk. Terrible. I used to like those jokes.
It's a good one, Hazel.
Knock, knock. Oh, everybody's on mute. Go on, Megan. You'll have to do the who's there.
Who's there?
Banana.
Banana who?
Knock, knock.
Banana.
Banana who?
Knock, knock. I'm confused. Who's there?
I think we might have lost the comedic timing there a little bit.
Right, sorry, I ruined that joke, did I? Yes. Okay.
No, it's good. But this is Orange. You glad I didn't say banana? I like it. I get that.
Yes, we've got joke side effects as well. Yes.
Have you seen the comment from Finland there, Hazel?
Oh, okay, fair enough. That's absolutely fair enough. There we are. Great.
I'm sure there's some funny people in Finland. I'm
Googling a joke because I can't.
Okay, yes. Hello. Nice to meet you all. Of course, there are funny people in Finland, but I only remember jokes in Finnish language, and I'm sure you don't know any Finnish language, so unfortunately
not. Yes, unfortunately not. Hi, Severio. Thanks for coming. Okay. Do you all know who Postman Pat is? What do you call Postman Pat when he has lost his job?
Is it just Pat?
Yes, Pat. And that one works for Fireman Sam as well. Dora the Explorer. Yes, good. Lovely. Thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves and for having a bash at the jokes. Brilliant. Okay. So to begin with then, for those of you who may not have come across the EntreComp Playbook, it's a how-to guide to developing entrepreneurial competencies. And the playbook sets out 9 principles of entrepreneurial learning, which use EntreComp as an acronym. And those 9 principles of entrepreneurial learning are experience, if you follow me across with the letters for EntreComp on the screen, experience, novelty, triggers, reflection, ecosystem, collaboration, others, mentoring, and progression. And the one that is relevant to us today is triggers, because as the playbook says, emotions are always present in the learning process, especially when learners collaborate to resolve ill-defined problems. So problems without a clear answer, when we're like, we're not sure where this is going to lead us or what the result is going to be. It can include frustration, conflict, failure. So there are a lot of emotions involved in these processes, particularly when we're taking account of unforeseen events. But because we are so keen in entrepreneurial learning on experience, experiences include automatically an emotional dimension. And we can use this emotional dimension to our advantage as teachers. And the evidence is growing that addressing the emotional side of learning can pay off and increase self-efficacy, entrepreneurial passion, and the build-up of entrepreneurial identity. Traits like enthusiasm, positivity, optimism, they can all spring from harnessing the positive aspects of our emotions. So why use humour then? So education has traditionally been seen as a very serious business. And if you're enjoying it, you're not doing it right. So that was certainly the case when I was in school many, many years ago. But I remember one particular incident from when I was about 7. We used to have silent reading sessions where you would be able to choose a library book and then we had to sit and read it in silence. And I'm not sure if you're all familiar with a series of children's books from the 1930s called Just William. And William was a very naughty boy. He was always scruffy and always getting into trouble. And I used to love these books because I related to William and his scruffy ways. And they were very, very funny. And so I would be laughing out loud in the silent reading and would get thrown out of the class. And to this day, I feel a keen sense of injustice because it's not my fault that they put funny books on the shelf for the silent reading sessions, but it was almost as if I was being naughty, laughing, finding these books funny. And also when I first started teaching, I was keen to have fun, not just for my own enjoyment and pleasure, but also as a way of engaging and motivating my learners. Other teaching staff walking past my classroom would often come into my class to see where the teacher was because my students appeared to be too happy and to be having too much fun to be learning seriously. And I remember once they were working in groups and the principal of the college came in and shouted at the students because one had his feet up on a chair. You know, they were looking far too cozy and happy, I think. They were working. So, but yes. So what I learned was that the approaches I used when I was teaching would sometimes be mistaken for frivolous or superficial, not serious enough. You know, there's not enough learning taking place in that room. So over the years, I've collected evidence to support my approach and my practice. And I was very pleased and reassured to see triggers and emotions featuring in the principles for effective practice in developing EntreComp competences. So why would we want to use humour then? Well, in the first instance, it activates the brain's dopamine reward system. And dopamine's been linked to both motor and motivational functions. Several motivational hypotheses have been challenged, but it remains clear that dopamine is vital for the stamping in of stimulus reward and response reward associations. So it increases and stimulates goal-oriented motivation and long-term memory. Studies have been undertaken where they've delivered the same learning to students, to one group in a humorous way and to one group in a non-humorous way. And the humorous approaches led to longer retention of the learning. And that improvement in retention applies to students of all ages, from small students to adults. Another reason, and this is one of my personal favorites, is to increase joy and enhance the classroom environment to improve learner outcomes. I've worked with many young people over the years who are absolutely terrified of school phobic, or will not attend school. And so and are almost phobic of the classroom environment. So laughter can be a very powerful tool with those sorts of learners to reduce that stress and anxiety. Enthusiasm and humour are very contagious, and laughing together, people tend to look around and notice other people who are laughing, and it can build a sense of community and togetherness, bonding, if you like, for a group. To laugh together is to learn together well. It can help people to relax using humour. It can lower defences and help people to overcome shyness, and can bring individuals together. But it also activates our sense of wonder and awe and curiosity. And these are traits which are very important to effective learning. So yes, it can reduce stress, but using humour, reducing that stress and tension or any fear or apprehension around learning can encourage learners to take risks in their learning, to be more willing to have a go, give it a try, because what could possibly go wrong? The worst thing that could happen is that we'll all have a laugh. But it can also increase optimism. In fact, so well that I've written that point down twice. So what about using humour with teenagers then? And this was one. Teenagers are quite difficult to impress at certain ages. So if the idea of using humour in front of judgmental teenagers makes you nervous, research shows that adolescents tend to release more dopamine and have more dopamine receptors than adults. And because of their hyper-responsive dopamine reward system, adolescents may be uniquely primed to react positively to educational humour. Try telling a funny story or allowing your students to come up with humorous examples in their projects or discussions. Can anybody remember Sesame Street? Is that available internationally? Sesame Street, the American program with the Muppets, and then the songs where you learn to count and learn the alphabet. Well, Sesame Street used to use humour a lot. People falling down the stairs carrying cakes and things like this. And so they've used the humour successfully for many years. And that's why a piece of research was undertaken using Sesame Street episodes to test the impact of humour on retention and engagement in very young pupils, nursery and infant school children. And when the content was tested, the children who watched the humorous segments scored higher and showed better engagement than the control group. And their engagement transferred even to those elements of the class learning that were not delivered in a humorous way. So you only even need to pepper your lessons with a small element of humor to increase the retention of the whole session. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of group work first of all. So it would give you the opportunity to speak to each other. Can I put you in breakout rooms in pairs to have a chat about this? Because not all humor is necessarily a good thing. So I wanted us to take about 5-10 minutes to have a think about do's and don'ts of using humor. So I'd be interested in your initial ideas around what humor you think will support learning and what sorts of humor, if any, are not conducive to effective learning. Okay, so if I can put you in groups in pairs.
I'm just doing that now, Hazel.
Thank you. So 3 do's and 3 don'ts for using humor.
Okay, opening rooms.
Thank you, Ellen.
Hopefully it's working.
So in our group then, for the do's, we came up with more than 3. They sort of overlap, but we thought humor is very useful for icebreakers, but also for energizers. You know, when you feel like you're losing the room and you can see your students listening to you going like this, I'm falling asleep. You can wake them up with a bit of humor. Real stories, real life examples of can be excellent illustrations of learning points, but also bring humor and make for very memorable lessons. But we felt that it was very important to be respectful, to treat people with respect. But it's also useful to build study skills, you know, to practice training and practice and those drill exercises. Often humor can make those sorts of repetitive activities more enjoyable. But we all agreed that it's particularly funny when the teacher makes a mistake. That can be hilarious. And I really like it when the teacher goes, yes, you've spotted the deliberate mistake. It was a test all along. But we also felt that it was really important for entrepreneurial educators to be able to role model overcoming challenges and overcoming mistakes, how we work through failure. What do we do when something goes wrong? Humor can soften those moments and reduce the stress and tension of those moments. But some very clear don'ts we had were: don't humiliate people, don't make anyone feel bad, don't ridicule people or make people feel silly. But also a good point is to not use humor too much, because after all, we are educators and not stand-up comics. This isn't stand-up comedy, it's education. Sarcasm is an interesting one, because sometimes sarcasm can be mean, but I wonder whether, I'm sure in certain circumstances I've used sarcasm, but not in a mean way, just in a, you know, a slightly humorous way. Then, you know, if somebody asks a really silly question all the time, you know, that sort of scenario, I think I've probably used sarcasm there. But it's very important that people don't feel that they're being laughed at, I think. So that's what we came up with from our group. What about, would somebody from another group, can you share what you came up with for the do's and don'ts?
Hi, Hazel.
Hi.
Hi, Annabelle and I were talking about very much the same thing, but how your use of humour with learners can take quite a while to develop. It takes you a while to know what they can tolerate or what they will understand, and your learners will take a while to work out the same for you. So I remember being advised at the very beginning of my teaching career to go in and err on the side of caution until you can work them out, and it's age and stage dependent as well. So it's part of building a positive relationship, and young learners in particular will always they tend to know your boundaries and someone else's boundaries, and they can work that out over time, but they need that role modeling, so it's really important.
Yes, yes, good point. Yes, lovely. And the age appropriate thing is particularly with pet, when you're working with children or younger people. Yes, it's got to be age appropriate. Lovely. And similar sorts of don'ts did you have?
Yeah, we spoke about sarcasm as well, and how younger learners don't really understand it. But I think people kind of put a higher age group on it than is appropriate. I've used it with 8 and 9-year-olds because that's when they start to experiment with it. Again,
Yes.
not being mean to anyone. So, and we talked about using children's literature to explore that. A lot of classic, authors, Roald Dahl used it. So everyone's got that kind of standard, but things have changed recently. If you look at David Walliams, seems to be a wee bit more risk-taking with the humour, and we can have those conversations with learners, what's appropriate and what's not. So.
Yes. That's a really nice way into establishing people's comfort levels, isn't it? Comfort zones, I suppose, isn't it? Yes, good point. Lovely. Thank you. Thanks for that. And another group? Shall I share the ones I prepared earlier? One sec. Does anybody want to share some from?
We've got some.
Great. Yes, please.
I didn't write it down, so I'll let you speak.
Okay. It seems that we talked about some common points in the do's. Our humoristic situation or position that we are having is an authentic or a new one. So in the don'ts, it's about not repeating the joke or the incident that created a kind of laughter in class. The other thing is that it should fit with the age group and the audience who are present in class. And on the contrary, in the don'ts, we should avoid mentioning people or specific people or names, especially because we said that we don't want to tell a joke in the form of a joke, but it's rather a kind of an incident or in the form of a story telling to students. What else? It should fit to the age group and the mindset, to the right people. The humor should be a kind of previously introduced. Is that Ray? There is a kind of an introduction to the humoristic position that we are going to use.
Yes.
Yeah. And not too many, the don'ts, not too many of the humor.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes, we're not comedians, are we? We're educators, ultimately. Yeah, so it's like, I suppose it's a bit like seasoning, maybe like salt and pepper. Just enough, not too much. Lovely, thank you. Any other feedback before I move on and share the ones I prepared earlier? Okay, here we go. So I've got some do's and don'ts, and I'm going to add, we've added to this list, which is good. So do use humor to enhance classroom joy and pleasure and a sense of fun and positivity. Use humor to develop a sense of community, that bonding and togetherness. Use content-related humor. Now that's a very safe one, you know, sort of making puns out of the learning content or the knowledge at hand. Use age-appropriate humor. Sandwich humor in between instruction and repetition, or season your lesson with humor. And it says here to avoid sarcasm in case it's misunderstood, or certainly to be handled more carefully. Definitely zero tolerance, cruel or inappropriate humor. We're definitely not in the business of making people feel bad. Forced humor, yeah, if it's not working, drop it, because it can be very painful otherwise. Off-topic humor, something that's totally irrelevant. Let me tell you a joke about something that's totally irrelevant. It advises against that. And as we all agreed, not too much humour. So those are some do's and don'ts. But I'm going to be adding to those because I think we've come up with some nice ideas to add to the do's and don'ts there as well. Okay. So then how do we use humour? So I've got some practical examples to run through with you for some suggestions. So you can let your students know that you've got a sense of humour and you're not afraid to use it with posters or memes. It says that meme on the end of the grumpy old man is, are we doing anything fun in this lesson? Then there's quite a witty one about maths. Never argue with a 90-degree angle because it's always right. And then there's a nice punctuation one. Let's eat grandma, or let's eat grandma. So that's a nice illustration. So you can use these memes to reinforce maths rules or language rules to make a bigger impact. But you can also increase the positive climate in your classroom with some visual jokes around the classroom on the walls. So whenever we see classes face to face, they have to come into the classroom and they have to leave, and we can celebrate those entrances and departures, if you like, in very creative ways. Scavenger hunts and puzzles can bring laughter and raise levels of engagement. Increasingly online, we can see digital tools which copy popular television quiz shows. They sort of take the quiz show format and use it for learning. In the UK, two popular examples are Countdown and Blockbuster, and these can inspire learning games. Are there other versions from other countries which are used in a similar way? Any sort of popular TV quiz shows which people are using in the classroom? Any in Palestine or Finland, Spain?
I think a popular one that I've used before for English language learning is Jeopardy, which even though I wasn't super familiar with it because it's an American show, it's a quiz show, and you can do some really nice fun things with it because there are prizes attached to different levels to how difficult the questions are, and the kids really respond to games like that. Yes.
Does anybody else from any other countries use the TV program quiz formats as learning methods or assessment methods? Okay, well, I would recommend it because there are nice free tools available. If you don't have local programs, have a look for Blockbuster and Countdown and Jeopardy as the templates, because there are lots of tools and templates available online so that you can make your lesson seem more fun and like a UK TV quiz show rather. Using costumes and props can promote imagination and creativity, important elements of entrepreneurial learning, but also using pictures to speak for you. So if a student is shy and doesn't want to present their learning, they can use a character, an animated character, to present the information so that they can still write the content, but use a different face. Have you seen those apps where you can, where there are all sorts of animations that will talk for you? You know, you can use those when students are lack confidence to present their learning. But also attention grabbing calls and responses. I'll show you these now. I like these. I was going to introduce one of these, but I thought maybe not. So it's like where you train the class with a call and then there's a response. So it's like if I said, all set, everybody else would go, you bet, or hocus pocus, everybody focus, you know. So it's like the teacher says one thing and the class responds, and it's a way of getting it's a really fun way of getting everybody on the same page, ready to take the next step into another alternative. And there are some nice examples there. I like holy moly guacamole, I have to say. To infinity and beyond. Yes, I'm not so sure about the McDonald's advert. I don't think I'd use that because I wouldn't like to be seen to be promoting McDonald's for all sorts of reasons. But I do like stop, collaborate and listen. It's the beginning of that ice baby, you know, that rap. So there are some nice examples there, or you could make up your own, but it's definitely a good way of calling the whole class to attention very efficiently. And there we are. So the final point is it's not cool to make fun of others, but no one minds the teacher making fun of themselves. Or learners can make fun of themselves if they're comfortable to do so, and it can take the pressure out of any tension or stress that people may have. So I'm interested then if you have any examples of using humour which you found positive that you'd be willing to share with us today.
Hazel, I don't mind sharing the one that we discussed
Lovely.
yesterday. So
Thank
Hazel
you.
and I were having a chat yesterday about what would be in the session today. And I was telling her about some examples, some experiences from my school days. And there was one that stuck out actually in, I think it was year 8 or year 9 science class. And the teacher, unbeknown to the rest of the students, had put some stinky fish paste in one of the cupboards. And you might be thinking, that's disgusting. Why would she do it? But she was teaching us about diffusion of smells that we were, or molecules, and that's what we had been studying at the time. So she had a lot of joy watching everybody in the class as our faces started to scrunch up as we started to smell the stinky fish paste. And obviously speak to her friend, can you smell that? What's going on? And when she explained it to us afterwards, what she'd done and why she'd done it, we thought that it was a brilliant moment, that it lightened the lesson and it definitely made us smile, even if we had to open the windows afterwards.
And
And
you still remember it.
There you go, I still remember.
I was just going to say that. Exactly.
That's it.
Yes, definitely. Or do you have any ideas then from this session which you would plan to try in your practice, anything that appeals to you? Which ones do you think that you could use quite easily?
I have to say I'm like to infinity and beyond.
Yeah. I love that call and response thing because that's like
It's
a
so
really
simple.
nice, yeah. Yeah. And
So
you could come up
simple.
all sorts, you could ask the learners themselves to write them.
And it's, you know, those kinds of rhymes work in any language, I think, as well.
I always
Right.
feel a bit envious of people working with I work with university students, and I always feel a bit envious of people working with younger children when I'm in this, because I'm like, oh, I remember when I was teaching in a primary school and it was so much fun because I could do stuff like that. And I think that it's a different thing. It's not the challenge with teenagers that you have talked about, but it's another thing where it's like there's still so much of like you know, and you can be silly with adults,
yes,
and you can be silly with really little kids, and then I feel like right up till they're kind of 20, it's very, you know, 12 to 20 or something, it's very difficult to find the right ways of using humor that they don't think it's patronizing or whatever. And so I think I tend to just go for kind of willingly ridiculing myself, yes, in the hope that it's just going to kind of humanize all the situations and kind of not minding if they're going along with it or not. So like we've been doing a thing where the students have to do a kind of online like an online learning course, and we're kind of holding sessions where the allotted time that they can do it in, and then we're doing the Pomodoro method with them, so that where you work for 20 minutes and then take a 5-minute break, and we're on hand so they can ask us if they need any help, but really they're just kind of independently working, and it's all online, and so you can't see anything, they're just black boxes, and I've just got to sort of assume that they're doing something, and then we're trying to facilitate fun activities in the break, and you're just like, I have no idea whether anyone's doing anything, whether they even want to, whether the whole thing's useful or not. But like last week, I thought it's humor in like in a different sort of sense. So it was like the weather suddenly dropped in England last week, and like it was cold, and I was realizing I was hunched over doing this, and then in the break I was just like, right, I don't know if anyone else if anyone else is like hunched over and really cold, but in the 5-minute break now you can join me, and I was literally just stood there doing star jumps. Brilliant. And like waving my arms around and just being like, I have no idea if anyone's doing this, but hopefully at least one other person out of the 40 of you has decided that this is a good idea, because I'm feeling really warm now. And it's not like making a joke, but and I sort of hope that even if people don't do it, it's creating like a light enough atmosphere and tone that's helping with the learning anyway.
And waking up the brain, that one, definitely.
Yes.
That and the Pomodoro clock, excellent for ADHD.
Yeah, but it's I find it very hard with this, you know, with the online teaching where you've got no idea how your humor's going down or not. And I think it's much harder to come up with that spontaneous humor because you don't have the people to react to in the same way.
You can't read them as well, can you? I think that was an important point that was made sort of through the discussion. So you've got to know the group. I mean, there's an element where you can sort of make fun of yourself to make things more comfortable or less intimidating perhaps. But yes, I think it's definitely worth knowing your students before engaging with them. At one time, you're talking about star jumps. At one time, I had a class of boys who'd been excluded from school, and they were about this far away from young offenders institutions, you know. So they were easily distracted. And I'm not sure if I should confess to this actually, but Megan, I should have run this past you yesterday. But as a means of sort of bringing them back on task, you know, like that call response, I would break dance at the front of the class, you know, and they used to laugh at me and think it was ridiculous, but they were paying attention to me then, which was great. So it achieved its aim, but I was a really awful break dancer, I have to say. But yes, doing the spins on my back, trying to do the worm, the whole thing.
Next team meeting, Hazel.
I'm sure you made an impression on lots of them, because how many kids go home and when their parents ask them, so what did you do at school today? The best they can get out of them is just a monosyllabic response from them. But I'm sure lots of them say, oh my God, the teacher was dancing, she's crazy. I'm sure you made an impression.
Yes, but I think they were, but invariably, in my experience, students respond well to when you can laugh at yourself, and then they become more willing to have a go and are less afraid of looking silly or making fools of themselves, because it's done in an atmosphere of kindness and mutual support and positivity. It comes from a good place, you know. But yes, good. That's lovely. Any other comments or examples or ideas that anybody would like to share?
Yes, there was a comment from Julie, and I think probably lots of people will agree with that with the middle group of teenagers, I think this carries on from what you said, Ray. The middle group of teenagers find you funny, but they don't necessarily react. You might just get an eye roll. Yes,
that's right. Yes. And then again, it's knowing your students, isn't it? And whether they're really hating it or whether they're, you know, that's great. Lovely, thank you. Okay, so I've got a John Cleese quote. John Cleese of Monty Python fame. He who laughs most learns best. So to sum up then, 40 years of educational humour research indicates that humour increases the strength of human connections, and that non-aggressive, relevant, appropriate humour appears to be a helpful learning tool. And it seems to be particularly useful to sandwich humour between instruction and repetition to break up the monotony of it, I suppose. But authors of some of this research say that not everyone is naturally humorous, so educators shouldn't force it. Watching someone struggle to be funny can be very awkward and can defeat the purpose. And developmental differences must also be considered, as younger students may find irony, sarcasm and exaggeration difficult to understand. So back to reinforcing that age appropriate point. But I've also pulled together some research. So I think I'm not sure. Let me stop sharing. I could put those links in the chat or email them. Do we have a distribution list, Megan? We can send the research to you.
Yes, absolutely. I will update on the EntreComp Europe website. You'll see everything there. And when we send invitations for the next EntreComPEdu Café, details will be included there too on the email.
Brilliant. Because there is plenty of research, because this was the nice thing. So when people used to say, oh, you don't do any work in your classrooms, you're always messing about and playing, I'd be going, well, here's the research that proves that this is a very effective way to enhance learning and motivation and lots of other things. Yes. So thank you ever so much for coming today. Any questions or final comments?
Hazel, there's one comment in the chat from Annabelle who wants to ask about using humour with students with different cultural backgrounds.
Yes.
So I don't know if you have any experience with that.
Yes, I've worked with groups of women in English language learning groups, and I'm always much more cautious in those circumstances because of different sensitivities, and I don't know enough about what's offensive in different cultures. So I think I would be extra careful in those circumstances, I think. So I tend to sort of play it safe, play it really safe, you know. Because as I say, the last thing you want to do is offend somebody or make someone feel bad. But yes.
I guess as we've said, it comes back to knowing your audience, to knowing what your students, your learners can, first of all, understand, and secondly, that they appreciate in the classroom.
Yes. But don't let anybody tell you that just because you're having fun, you're not learning or doing serious learning work, you know. Great. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. It's lovely to see you. And so this is our first English language cafe of this academic year. And we'll be planning many more. So if there are topics you'd like us to cover or people you'd like us to try and get that for you to listen to, please let us know. Lovely.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Good to see you. See you next time, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.